Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for calling this very important hearing. There are really two different philosophies of government that are on view around the world today. And one is that the government belongs to the leader of the government, the president, for his own self-enrichment and profit-making and self-aggrandizement and the enrichment of his personal family and his friends and corporations. And you can be a very poor performer in terms of public effectiveness as long as you're making money for yourself and enhancing your own private interest, then it's okay. The other theory is the old-fashioned theory that government must be an instrument of the public interest in the common good, and you must be serving the people, and it should not be an interest of private self-enrichment. Now, I'm delighted that we are moving in America from one model to the other. I'm surprised to hear about the fact that public employees have been thrilled with the leadership of the last president in the government, and I'm going to be very interested to read about that. I mean, perhaps it's all of those workers who are filling out the forms who are the so-called poor performers who play solitaire, watch TV, and spend their day on social media fighting with people rather than doing their jobs that may explain those results. But I don't know. I've got an open mind as to what's going on there. In any event, the happiness of the federal workforce is not really the controlling metric of the effectiveness of the federal workforce, which is really what we should care about. And as a representative who has more than 70,000 federal workers in my district, I've heard nothing but complaint about the way that the last administration undermined the federal workforce at every turn, beginning with the longest government shutdown in American history, 35 days, massive furloughs accompanied with that, the imposition of a hiring freeze, which is a completely arbitrary, random way of figuring out where to make cuts in the federal workforce, pay freeze, authoritarian executive orders that accomplish union busting and the nullification of collective bargaining agreements, and on, all the way up to the incitement of a violent insurrection against the union, the Congress, and all of the federal workers who are there to defend us. But I want to go back to this question F. We know that President Trump tried to pull the plug on having a professional expert workforce with an executive order at the very end of his presidency. And Professor O'Connell, I wonder if you would briefly state what this executive order sought to do and why it is diametrically opposed to the principles of the civil service.
Yes, Representative. So the executive order would have created a new line in the accepted service, a Schedule F, for employees involved in confidential policy determining, policy making, or policy advocating roles. Many estimates are quite different than Mr. Shirk's, that it would have taken many more employees from the competitive service into this new CF, would have stripped those employees of their civil service protections. Of course, our civil rights legislation would still apply, but many of the protections that the civil servants now have, those would go. And this would have many detrimental effects.
Okay, thank you. Ms. LaChance, let me ask you, is President Biden's executive order reversing President Trump's Schedule F executive order enough to repair the damage of what was done? Should we just stick with that executive order by President Biden?
Thank you, Congressman. I think it was a great start, and it had to be done immediately. We had to send a signal right away to say that this sort of cherry picking of deciding who stays and who goes had to end, and it had to end immediately. However, I do think that the Congress should take a very, very careful look at whether those decisions should be the purview of a single president of either party, of any party. Shouldn't this process be subjected to and be a part of the deliberations that occur in this body and in the Senate? And shouldn't we think about these things carefully rather than doing something with the stroke of a pen, removing people's protections, and in my view, actually undermining an evidence-based and data-based decision-making process.
Thank you. I got to cut you off there because I have one more question for President Kelly. What can we do to restore the morale of the workforce after these serial assaults on it over the last several years?
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Kelly, you may respond briefly.
Well, first of all, I will say that, we have to concentrate on getting the morale of the workforce back up. We have to concentrate on pay, making sure that employees are paid adequately. Now, every corporation in America has figured this out, right? If you want to attract and retain better talent, pay more and offer better benefits. The federal government is the only place where the idea is entertained that to attract better talent, you ought to offer less.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and thank you, Mr. Raskin.